Hey folks, welcome back to another live stream. It's good to have you with me, Virtual Pilot. We are back in the UK for today's stream down on the south coast in what is going to be quite an interesting approach. So we're flying today from Chichester or Goodwood Airport, which is near the Isle of Wight. We're going to be following the south coast along all the way to Lydd, which is the most southeasterly airport in the UK. Happens to be right next to a nuclear power station, which makes for some very interesting patterns. I'm going to bring up Sky Demon, actually, just show you what I mean by that. So Sky Demon, if you're not familiar with it, is a real bit of flight planning software that real-world pilots use. So I just zoom out. We're here in the UK, starting over here. So you've got the Isle of Wight just there, and Goodwood Airport there. We'll be going straight south down to this peninsula and then following the coastline along. And I've got a Google Earth Studio video which I will put on in a second to show you the route. But just here on Sky Demon, there are an awful lot of restrictions around Lydd Airport. So the two most notable are this circular exclusion no-fly area, which is to do with the nuclear power station, which is right here on the peninsula. But there is also a military firing ground where they do some sort of test firing right here, right next to the airport and that exclusion area. So you have to go in a relatively sort of funky approach. You can't follow the coastline all the way through. Otherwise, you're going to go straight into both those exclusions. So they'll hop inland from Hastings there. But if you look here at the traffic pattern, it's really interesting. We're doing a whole heap of reading around this. You are allowed to penetrate, for want of a better word, into this exclusion that exists around the power station. Now, of course, that exclusion only goes from the surface to 2,000 feet. So if you're above 2,000 feet, you can just fly over the thing. Pattern altitude at Lydd Airport is 1,000 feet above mean sea level, which puts you within that area. Now, if you go and read the very specific restrictions about this particular piece of airspace, they'll say that if you're coming out of the pattern or into the pattern, if you've just taken off from or intend to land at Lydd Airport, you can go into that extrusion zone, but you have to maintain 1.5 nautical miles from the power station, which is right down here in the corner. Now, how exactly you know that you're 1.5 nautical miles, or that they do, I've got absolutely no idea. I guess it's a little bit of judgment, a little bit of science, and a little bit of skill. But it makes for this very odd crosswind leg. If you look here, where you would normally come out at a 90-degree angle, you're effectively going round on a diagonal to maintain your distance. It makes for an interesting pattern. And actually, as we fly in, we'll be coming, you see this purple arrow here, we'll effectively cross overhead here at 1,500 feet. No overhead joins at Lydd. We will then effectively descend on our downwind leg, descend down to pattern altitude, and then do a normal approach and come in and land. But it makes for a slightly more interesting approach. Tonight's flight, of course, will be all VFR. Now is probably a good time for me to show you the intro video. Our flight today will take us across the south coast of the United Kingdom, from a town near the Isle of Wight. Located near Chichester, Goodwood serves as both an aerodrome and racing track, from which we will depart west, avoiding the town due to noise abatement procedures, and fly over a solar array. We will then turn due south, flying over the countryside towards the town of Selsey and the area of headland in the English Channel known as Selsey Bill. We are flying VFR today, so this gives us an easily identifiable landmark which we can see from some distance. We will then start flying east, using the coastline as a line feature for the purpose of VFR navigation, flying at 3,500 feet. We have two very identifiable landmarks in Brighton's Palace Pier, as well as Marina Pier, which has many boats docked at it. We will stay within gliding distance of the land in case of an engine failure, ensuring we keep the line feature on our left, which traffic coming in the other direction should also be doing, providing some separation of the aircraft. We will then continue across the south coast until we reach the town of Hastings, where we will then turn landward to avoid the flight restrictions around Lydd Airport. Passing the town of Rye, we will descend to 1,500 feet before turning towards the airfield. We will join overhead, descending to pattern altitude of 1,000 feet on the crosswind leg, as there are no overhead joins at Lydd. Our pattern will be slightly different here in order to ensure that we remain 1.5 nautical miles from the nuclear power station located on the headland. Our famous landmarks today include Brighton's Palace Pier, which was built in 1899 and was the third pier to be constructed in Brighton. We will also pass by Brighton's Marina, which was artificially created and opened by Queen Elizabeth II in 1979. Boeing operated two hydrofoils from this pier, capable of carrying up to 400 passengers, one of which was later purchased by the Royal Navy to support them practicing operations against modern hydrofoils. Just whilst I was playing you that video, there is a very random aircraft that seems to be buzzing around us. I'm guessing that's somebody watching the video has jumped into the multiplayer and is now, I would say, assaulting me, because what you didn't see is he just flew into me. At a glance, saw this big orange thing flash across the screen, and I must have been his wing as he passed very close to me. So we're starting off at Goodwood. We are in the Piper Arrow PA-28 Arrow 3, a fabulous aircraft from Just Flight, a little bit old now. She's had some very nice updates recently, and I think still makes one of the best general aviation aircraft in the game, in the sim, should I say, by a country mile. We're using Burning Blue Designs Goodwood aerodrome. It's a great aerodrome. It's actually got a racetrack that goes around it with cars whizzing around it. But what did amuse me slightly is the what I assume is aerial photography with parked aeroplanes that I will presume is still the original Isobo. And if you look there, you can just see a car zooming round what is a very famous racetrack here in the UK. So I think that is enough. I nearly forgot. Of course, this evening's flight is alcohol fueled. As always, I've got a very nice Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc that I'm drinking this evening from Mudhouse. Again, not a UK wine. Not that the UK's got very many good wines. This is the New Zealand wine that I should have been drinking in the last live stream when I didn't have one available for me. So what can I say, folks, right? Better late than never. I was going to read you the label, but through a combination of my terrible eyesight, believe it or not, I have to wear multiple glasses now for reading close. And there is no way that little tiny writing is going to be legible to me at all. So we're not even going to attempt it. But cheers. Right, that is enough faffing around from me. It's time for us to get in the aircraft. It's time to get this flight started. Okay, folks, yep. Hopefully you're still with me. Just getting ourselves set up. We need to get our FSNE board, as we'll be flying VFR, so we will need our VFR charts. Actually far harder to do this in the sim than it is to do it in real life, hence the need to stretch stuff out. It's not so easy to just fold the charts in a way in which you can easily unravel them. Let's get our tie downs and our chocks off. Let's get our prop full forward. Okay, power and alternator is going on. Get our fuel pump on. Yeah, it would help if we turned the fuel on. You actually use the mixture to introduce the fuel. Get the engine going, and we'll set ourselves at 1000 RPM. Looking good. We should have got our beacon on before we did any of that, but hey ho, look, there's no one around, and we're in a sim, so it's okay. We've got the GTN 750 NXI, but we will not be using that.
System test okay.
We will not be using that today. We're VFR all of the way. Just taking a quick look at our aerodrome chart. Hopefully that's clear. So we are just here next to holding point C. We're going to taxi our way over to holding point D, where we're going to do our run up. We're going to take off from runway 24. Got nice clear skies today. There are some very specific noise abatement procedures in place here at Goodwood, so we will adhere to those. So we're taking off from runway 24. We need to take an immediate right after takeoff so that we can avoid overflying the town of Chichester. There's a very distinctive solar panel array that you will have been able to have seen in the intro video that I just put up. Cruising at 3,500 feet. I think we're full of fuel. Alternator current looks good. Pressure is coming up. Okay, let's get our taxi on. Taxiing over the the stained aircraft in the ground, which continues to amuse me. Excellent, excellent scenery add-on from Burning Blue Designs here. Not one of their newest ones, but it's an area of the country I'm familiar with, so it's one of my favourites. No particular wind to worry about for our run-up today. So we get the parking brake on. We're going to go full rich. Going to bring the engine up to 1700 RPM. So looking for no more than a 50 RPM drop. Sorry, no more than 150 RPM drop and less than 50 RPM difference between the two magnetos. That one's looking good. That one's looking good as well. We'll exercise the prop. It's looking good, and reduce to idle and the engine shouldn't cut. Okay, that's all looking good. Let's get our strobe and landing light on. Fuel pump. We're not going to need the pitot heat on what is a nice summer day. Just lean the mixture while we taxi onto runway 24. In fact, I'll put that fuel pump on in a second. It makes a relatively aggravating noise, so just need to remember to do it. So that is not the runway that we're looking for. More stained aircraft on the ground. There's one of the cars whizzing round Goodwood race circuit. I believe, and I'm not going to try to do it because I don't know how, I believe you can actually go in those cars and actually race them. Right, fuel pump is on. Full rich. We're lined up. In fact, I'm going to put one notch of flaps in because it's a short, relatively short runway. Airspeed is alive. T's and P's are in the green. That's 60 knots. Rotate. Ooh, big stutter there. Right, let's make sure we get up over these trees. And we're turning right to comply with the noise abatement. And get that notch of flaps out. Hey, there's Chichester there. There's the solar array just in front of us there, using a couple of add-ons from Flight Sim TO that add power lines and solar panels. Fantastic add-on I'm very likely to be doing a review of. All free, as you would expect. We're now coming round to 190 degrees. We'll bring ourselves down to 25 inches and 2500 RPM. We're at 800 feet. It would help to bring the landing gear up as well, wouldn't it, folks? So focused on getting over those trees, I forgot to do that. Right, we're at 1000 feet. We can get that fuel pump off. Yeah, flaps is definitely down. Did the flaps and not the landing gear. Just shows you just how easy it is to get distracted. Okay, so we're heading towards that landhead, which is known as Selsey Bill. It would, in theory, be easier for us to just sort of cut across there, but I've got a bunch of timings on my chart over here. If you look here, timings between the different legs, that intends you to fly it in a particular way, whoops, and at a particular speed, which is 119 knots as it happens to be. Now, to be fair, this route is relatively straightforward, getting a fair whack of turbulence today. Just coming up on 2,000 feet. I seem to have dropped out of VR, which is not super helpful. Windows mixed reality voice prompt suddenly kicking in and doing something not super helpful. The things that we contend with in the sim, that we don't have to contend with in real life. I've now lost all my charts. Right, let's concentrate on flying the plane. Let's aviate, navigate, communicate. Yes, I just lost virtual reality entirely then, and some sort of Windows mixed reality thing had just popped up. So next job for me is to switch all of those voice commands off. Just coming up on 3,000 feet. There we go, we've got it back. The distractions. The Piper does have a rudimentary autopilot, but it doesn't do altitude hold. It does with some fudges, but the actual aircraft doesn't do it, and I prefer, if I'm honest, from an immersion perspective, to sort of do it as the aircraft would expect it to be. Right. Coming within 100 feet of our target altitude, so reducing the manifold pressure to 20 inches, 2300 RPM. We're also going to lean the mixture a couple of degrees, lean a peak. It's not a huge distance that we're flying today, and we're not in a crazy rush, so just get the aircraft trimmed out. We've overshot our target altitude a little bit. A wonderful add-on that I got from Orbex, a load of South Coast vessels and cargo ships and stuff that really helps to bring the world alive. But we will turn now towards our easterly heading. So, I mean, even at 20 inches we're getting a little fast. To be fair, we were descending, so I'd expect that speed to start coming down some. But we want to be about 119 knots, so I'll just take the throttle out, maintain our altitude, and that will help bring our airspeed down. There we go. Now back to 20 inches. But that's looking okay. That's a nature, like a bird sanctuary down there. That's an area to avoid, and there's some kind of real world restriction at the moment over the beaches here on the left hand side. Normally I would hug the coastline a little tighter than this, but again, in the spirit of realism, Trying to follow the VFR charts as they are. So we've got some very distinctive landmarks that we can look out for. We've got Shoreham Airfield, which is our first point of contact to watch out for. That's then very quickly followed by the pier and the marina. Absolutely unmistakable as you overfly them, even at 3,500 feet. We've then got a peninsula with some white cliffs that's very clear to see. We'll then end up at Hastings, and then we'll go landward and we'll go across to Lydd. Now the beauty of this route is that the landmarks are so clearly distinguishable that I don't really feel the excessive need for the timings, as you will have seen me do on some previous live streams. So it really is quite a scenic, beautiful route. And I'm very happy, as always, with how the sim is performing. This, of course, being the first live stream that I've done since I got the 7950X 3D that I've got in my system, paired up with an RTX 4090. Experimenting currently with things like hardware accelerated graphics, HAGs, game mode and stuff like that. In fact, game mode you have to have on the 7950X 3D, having extra V cache but only on half the cores. You need the game bar, game mode, and I think something else switched on in order for it to know which of those processing cores it should be scheduling the work to. But you know, I'm getting cracking performance in here, and I've got the graphics turned up way higher than I had it on my 5800X. So it's perceivably very smooth. Little things like, can't see it right now, but scratches and imperfections in the windows that just... I mean, honestly, folks, there are days that I sit in here going, how has it actually got this good? For those of us that were playing things like F-19 Stealth Fighter on MS-DOS back in the 1980s, it's just inconceivable to me, really, that it's got this good. So we seem to have the airplane pretty well trimmed in. We're not gaining altitude, we're not losing altitude, we're pretty well bob on at our 119 knots. No autopilot, fairly hands-free, folks. It's, you know, as they say, trim is a poor man's autopilot. It's great to be back streaming. It's been far too long, really, since I've done that. I'm trying to make a few tweaks. I've had some feedback about maybe some background music would be good. I think that could make some sense. But these things are always an evolution, aren't they? Yeah, that's looking great. Very nicely trimmed. That slight tendency to twist to the left, so putting some trim in for that. We've got a ton of stuff coming in for us in June. So we've got the aircraft and avionics update, the second one of those. We've got the second city update covering a number of cities in France, which will be great. So expanding our horizons, I think, a little bit and getting ourselves across the English Channel and over to our French neighbours and do some flying across their country. No slowdown from third-party developers either. I installed 3 very good utilities this week, one of which changes the way in which you manage aircraft. It lets you favourite them. It lets you, most importantly, an absolute godsend, it lets you set predetermined control profiles for each aircraft. So I use the Bravo throttle quadrant and the Alpha yoke. Depending on which aircraft I'm flying, particularly with the throttle quadrant, not so much with the yoke, albeit I do make changes with the yokes. The axis setup and the button setup is very different. I mean, you know, you can use anywhere between 2 to 6 axes on the Bravo throttle quadrant. So as I'm hopping from aircraft to aircraft, I'm forever changing the control profiles. This thing does it automatically, so as you select the aircraft, you hop in it, it automatically sets the control profile that you've allocated to that aircraft. Also lets you favourite aircraft. From the same developer, there's a thing that lets you manage locations in the world a little bit better. And I think my personal favourite is a thing that modifies the login screen. Not the login screen, like the loading screens as you're loading into a flight, rather than the sort of random generic information that you get in random screenshots. It brings up satellite photography of the airport that you're actually flying out of, and it actually shows your position on that satellite photography. I thought that's a really nice little utility, little small quality of life improvements. I can't remember the developers and the names of the products off the top of my head, but I am planning to put a video out this week on all of those utilities, so keep your eyes peeled for that. So we're coming across our first landmark, which is Shoreham Airfield. So there is Shoreham just off 10 o'clock just there. I am actually going to start our timer, because we're pretty bob on with our speeds, etc. So we're now heading towards Brighton Marina, and that should take us 4 minutes. I don't know how well you can see that from here, but here in VR I can actually see the pier and the marina from here already. And you know, this is classic VFR flying. I was inspired to fly this route for a couple of reasons. I used to have family actually that lived in Chelsea, so it's a little nostalgic to be sort of flying in this part of the world. But I've also been enjoying the FS Academy series of videos. In particular, they're ones on VFR, and they used this part of the world to illustrate the principle of following a line feature, aka in this case the coastline, but it could be a motorway, a road, a train line, something like that. So all credit where it's due to FS Academy, who make a great series of training videos. What's been interesting, some of the principles that you learn on that is things like when you're following a line feature, make sure you stay on the right hand side of the line feature. Two very, very logical and rational reasons to do that. One is it's far easier for pilots sat on the left hand side of their aircraft to look out of the left window and see the line feature that they're following. The other is if you all do that, if there are aircraft coming the other way, they will be on the right of the line feature looking at it through the left window, so it will create some sort of separation. And you're typically all going to be at similar altitudes if you're flying VFR. sort of standard convention is if you are flying a heading between 0 and 179 degrees, then you should be on an odd altitude plus 500 feet. And if you're flying from 180 degrees to 364 degrees, you should be on an even altitude plus 500 feet. Very similar for IFR flights as well, actually, except you don't add the 500 feet, so it's just odd altitudes for 0 to 179 degrees and even altitudes for 180 to 364 degrees. So we're on an easterly heading, so we are 3,410 feet, so we've just descended a little bit there. But if you look down out of the window there is unmistakably Brighton Pier. We could get lower. I'm not going to, because we're just going to mess that all our speeds and everything up if we do that. But you can actually make out quite a bit of detail of the rides and roller coasters and stuff like that. A couple of vessels around it as well, and then unmistakably the marina. Now, one of my aggravations, and again folks, sorry, I'm not sure how clear it is to you, but the pop-in of vessels is very aggravating and very immersion breaking. As you get closer, more and more and more of them pop in. So yeah, you can see quite a lot of that going on now. I mean, it looks great when they're all there, but that sort of pop in, it's like somehow we've fast forwarded in time to Star Trek or something, and yeah, they're teleporting into the marina. They sort of pop in and pop out as well, and I'm not sure. I in no way, by the way, blame the packages that I've installed to do that. I'm certain that will be an Azobo limitation, and I'm not having a go at Azobo either. Actually, this is a mighty complicated simulator, and they do a grand job. I do feel like sometimes on the developer streams they look a little exacerbated with all the feedback they're getting. I'm just going to have myself a quick slurp of wine, folks. So the temptation, of course, here is to cut across this headland to save yourself some time, and there's, legally speaking, no reason that you couldn't do that, other than we are following a line feature, and it's good practice to choose not to do that, to maintain aircraft separation for the sake of the, 47 seconds that I might save myself, the risk that introduces. And it's just, that's good pilotage, making good decisions, making safe decisions, and just being patient. Always about being patient. I would say that was about the 4 minutes to that pier. I've completely failed. No, it's 5 minutes to the pier, so yeah, we're 5 minutes 38. That's about right. Get the timer going again. We're about 30 seconds late, heading to the Seaford VOR. About 5 minutes to that. I don't think VORs show up in the sim, actually, and they are actually fairly noticeable from the air. Big sort of like hexagonal things, and they're pretty distinctive actually when you know what you're looking for, but I'm pretty certain they don't show up in the sim. There's more boats there with that sort of pop-in effect and the sort of very distinctive white cliffs from the UK, from southern part of the UK. Yes, it's looking really good. Whether it's flying in real life or whether it's flying in VR, there is something that I find extraordinarily calming and soothing about being up in an aircraft. Right, let's have a quick look at our T's and P's. They're all still in the green. No need to rotate the fuel tank. I don't think we'll actually need to do that at all for this flight. It's really not a long flight in the grand scheme of things. And largely, all through uncontrolled airspace, we flew over Shoreham, but we were out at sea when we did that, and we were well above where that went. But if you look, we had the Goodwood restricted airspace, Shoreham, and then obviously when we get to Lydd, and then we've got the somewhat quite tricky various exclusions that we need to avoid. We've got custom Lydd Airport as well, also from Burning Blue Designs, and I have also downloaded a custom add-on for Dungress Nuclear Power Station, which is from Flight Sim TO. Content creator on there seems to be making his way around all of the UK nuclear power stations. But I suppose what is unique about this one is the proximity of Lydd Airport to Dungress. That just does make for an interesting approach. Now, I am fairly certain that there is a lighthouse missing from this particular bit. What do you say, folks? Should that be my little first hurrah into creating some custom scenery for Microsoft Flight Simulator? Not liking that at all. The random close page close. Close. There we go. I had the same problem again with Windows Mixed Reality deciding to pop something up. It's not super helpful when you're flying and live streaming. Now, I'm fairly certain that that lighthouse is missing. There should be a lighthouse right down on the corner here, and it's not there. Which is a shame, actually, because it's quite distinctly marked on our VFR map. And just here. And I don't know if you caught in the Google Earth video that I had at the beginning, it's quite distinctly visible, but it is not here in the sim. Oh, this just looks incredible. Right, let's get our timer on the go, because we are going to want to estimate when we get to Hastings. We've got Eastbourne to our left here, then we've got Brexhill, and then we've got Hastings. Then we're going to be flying to Rye. We want to really, as we get past Hastings, we want to start our descent. We've got a couple of thousand feet that we need to lose, and we don't want to lose tons and tons and tons. Well, we don't want to gain tons of speed as we do that, because we're suddenly going to have quite a lot going on. But given that we're travelling at least a third, I would say, of the bottom of the UK coast, it's in what is a relatively slow aircraft. This is the naturally aspirated version of the 28. It's not turbocharged or anything like that. You know, we're doing 119 knots. That's about 123 miles per hour, something like that. It obviously doesn't feel like a crazy speed. That would feel very fast in a car. Indeed, it doesn't feel so crazy up here. Honestly, folks, this is the way to do it. Alright, so when we get to Hastings, we are going to want to be heading to Rye. We're going to want to be on a heading of 450, let's call it. So let's get that dialed in now. It's largely what we're on, but always about planning ahead. So just getting a heading bug there, because we're going to switch the autopilot on, but just so we know where we're heading to. And I'm actually going to use the Vor needle to get that dialed in on aerodrome heading, ready to help us with the pattern. So that's 20, that's runway 21, so got that dialed in. We would be expected in the real world to be doing, to be requesting aerodrome information and joining instructions before we got to Rye. We won't be doing that today, but just for those of you that are interested in some of the real world procedures, you would be making your calls to Lydd, heading from this direction, of course, before you got to Rye. Don't believe it's a 24-hour service at Lydd. It is by prior appointment. And I think in particular you get some very specific instructions on those exclusion zones when you ring through. Alright, so this is Hastings coming up on us now. And it will be 4 minutes to Rye. A load of wind turbines that we need to keep our eye out for here as well, so don't want to start our descent too soon, otherwise we will get too low. Right, let's do a quick scan through. T's and P's are all in the green. Fuel is... we've barely used anything. I'm not going to bother rotating the tanks. Close. Close. Get our timer reset. It's a little imprecise. I mean, it's Hastings Castle that we put as the timer. Going to be hard for me to see that now because I suspect I'm over the top of it. But I think we're there or thereabouts, so we'll start our timer. We'll turn to 50 degrees. Rye is 4 minutes away, but that's only at a bit of turbulence there. Well, that's only at 119 knots, and we want to start descending, so I'm actually going to take the power out so that we can maintain our airspeed whilst we descending to 1,500 feet. Lydd Airport is at sea level there or thereabouts. Can actually see Rye just ahead of me, and I mean, you know, I'm a huge advocate for virtual reality flying. I think you can see a ton of stuff. I mean, notwithstanding the fact that you can just move your head round in a way that you can't on a monitor. I think you can see further, particularly with these very, very, very high fidelity headsets. I'm generally flying in the Varjo Aero. I do always use the Reverb G2 for streaming because the Vero is just a pain in the butt. An absolute pain in the butt to do. So this is interesting. We're getting a lot of turbulence now as we've come over land. So it's the settings here in the sim are about 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a May summer day, bright summer day. So it'll be pretty warm. The sun is heating. The sun is heating the ground. The ground is in turn heating the air. And of course, because it's later in the day, that's been going on for some time. It's making for a bit of a bumpy ride, folks, and you know, for all of those people saying that the turbulence is too strong in Microsoft Flight Simulator, as someone who flies small aircraft, I can tell you it's not. It gets very bumpy up there. The difference is that you have inertia and stuff like that, like, you know, when I'm looking down, if the plane starts to tilt, I feel it, and it prompts me to look up, whereas in here, because I don't have that sensory input, I don't feel it, and therefore I miss the prompt sometimes. Okay, so 2 minutes 40 into our 4 minutes, just passing 3,000 feet, so we're looking good. The nuclear power station is right out on that peninsula there. Very important that we avoid that for, I hope, a bunch of reasons that are fairly self-evident. We are getting a really bumpy ride here today. We're going to be getting our landing gear down early because of that effective corner that we're cutting off on our traffic pattern. In fact, I may even get the landing gear down before we've crossed the runway. And there's the wind turbines there that we want to avoid. Right, we're going to get our heading bug now turned to 84. Just short of due east. That's the 4 minute mark. We're a little slow. And just coming 2,500. We're a little bit on the high side, but we have still got we've still got 4 minutes to lose it. We're coming down at 500 feet per minute. So by my maths, we have got plenty of time to do that. Let's start our turn over to Rye. We do, of course, need to keep descending, and that turbulence just keeps bumping the nose up. Slowing our descent, so we just need to keep an eye on that. But I mean, this is just incredible, folks. absolutely mind-boggling sim. One of my very close friends who's far more of a DCS man than he is a Microsoft Flight Simulator very crudely referred to this as scenery simulator the other day, which I will forgive you for, Ben, but it's taken me some time to forgive you for it. I have been playing a fair whack of DCS as well. I did upload a DCS video a couple of weeks ago, and it was interesting because the YouTube analytics came back and said basically a bunch of people who normally watch your videos didn't watch this. So even within the sim community we're divided, folks. That's 2,000 feet, another 500 feet to go. And yeah, we've got a couple of minutes before we're at the airfield, so I'm feeling good about where we're at. Just less than 400 feet to go. You can see the power cables. Again, I don't think this is as clear to you as it is to me, but that's a huge immersion builder, like having proper power cables where you would expect them to be, rather than just pylons with nothing attached to them. Wind turbine spinning. I've got an add-on that... there we go, birds. I was literally just about to say I've got an add-on that adds in birds, and a flock of them just flew past. Just trying to find the airfield. It's over there, so we're a little off course. We're 1,500 feet, so I'm bringing the power back in. Nuclear power station just over there at 2 o'clock. I've got the airfield in sight. We're on speed. I'm actually going to get my landing gear down. You can drop the landing gear 129 knots in this aircraft, and that will create lots of drag for us and start slowing us down. It's also making the nose pitch down, so getting some trim in. But yeah, this does make for one of the more interesting traffic patterns. The aforementioned individual who called this scenery simulator is also quite adverse to a traffic pattern, and he knows I've got quite the penchant for them. They are fairly, I mean, all joking aside, they're really good things to drill your ability to control the aircraft. There's the airfield now. It's looking good. We're at 90 degrees. We're well away from that power station. Second that we cross the runway, we're going to get into our sort of crooked hockey stick crosswind. I have a habit of going out too far with this airfield. Right, we're bringing the power out. We want to descend to pattern altitude and get ourselves on our crooked downwind. I'm going to get our first notch of flaps in. Watch out for the tendency for it to lift the nose. Power going back in as we come up. Oh, we're a little bit tight there, so I'm going to keep the descent going down, I think. In fact, I'm going to take us out a little bit further. That is going to be a very, very, very tight base otherwise. I'm going to keep the descent going. A little bit on the far side, so taking the power out. That's looking better. Yeah, that's cool. Right, so let's turn base. Feel like we're stable. Got our landing gear down. Let's get landing lights. Get our fuel pump on. Yeah, we're going to do one continuous turn, I think, here. I knew I was tight. Second notch of flaps, and we're going to go full rich and high RPM. Not looking too shabby. Not a perfect pattern, but not terrible either. A little bit on the far side.
500.
And get ourselves down to 80 knots. It's a very narrow runway here at Lydd, so that's definitely one to watch out for. It makes you feel like you're maybe lower than you are, higher than you are. Okay, that's looking good. Final notch of flaps is in. Right, we're 3 gear locked and down. And get ourselves to 70 knots. It's looking good. We're stable on the approach. That's looking grand. Alright, across the threshold, taking the power out. Comes the round out. And flare. Oh, we've blown. Little bounce, tiny little bounce. Nothing terrible. That's not terrible. Not my best landing either. Oh, Just Flight have made the sensitivity of the steering once the nose wheel goes down far too high. Right, let's get the flaps out. A little bit of braking. And trim the mixture. Nice. Let's get the strobe off before we blind a bunch of people. And let's get our landing lights off. A nice short distance to the parking here at Lydd. Little short run around the block for us today, folks. Get ourselves parked up here next to this other Piper. Watching out for wingtip collision. Leaving plenty of space. Nice. Okay. Cutting the mixture. And getting our beacon off. Taking the fuel out. Alternator off, battery off. Crack our window because it's a hot summer's day. Crack a door. And there we go, folks, we're done. Always a classic state of a bit of VR here. Not sure what's going on with my camera there. It doesn't want to focus. Hello. There we go. A relatively short flight for you this evening, folks, with some interesting avoidance of nuclear power stations, relatively straightforward in the navigation, but a little bit of fun. A little bit of fun at the end there. So, as always, I hope you're very well wherever in the world you are. Stay safe in the skies, and I will see you in my next one.